to Kevin Hedderwick, who's the CEO of Famous Brands, and you're watching Captains of Industry here on CNBC Africa DSTV 410. Interim results, good top-line growth, which hasn't translated into similar operating profit growth. Talk to me about some of the challenges that you've had in the supply chain integration.
Yeah, we've taken on two very ambitious bits of business during the first 6 months, and probably taken them on at a tough time when the economy is not great either, but that doesn't matter. We commissioned a logistics business in Crown Mines in the south of Johannesburg. That piece of business previously used to be done by Vector Logistics. It's chilled and frozen distribution, which is challenging on its own. So I think we probably underestimated the complexity and the cost of setting that business up. And so you see that manifest itself in the margins in our logistics business, so it's been challenging. But I mean, there's good momentum there now, so I think in the second 6 months you'll see that business start to deliver and we'll get the margin back up again in logistics. The manufacturing side of the business, so we had strong top line growth, 40% growth in top line, and the margin has stayed the same. I would have expected that the margin would have improved, but we knew we were taking on some very low margin business, although the turnover is very positive. It's a meat manufacturing business, and the plan always was for us to drop our pork basket in there. We couldn't do it as quickly as we'd like to because the Competition Commission prevented us from doing it for the first 6 months. So it's a 2-year program. We've started on the 1st of October and it's all going well. So both those pieces of business I think will deliver over time. So it just really is the initial startup costs that have affected the businesses this time around.
Let's talk about the tough economic environment. You have mentioned the economic environment, but you say that you are still seeing a robust consumer.
We've always said that the food service space is a great place to trade. I mean, what we are seeing in that environment is that you've got more consumers coming into the category. They might be coming less, but they're spending more. So there's still lots of runway in the food service space in the South African landscape. So we probably are not as quite vulnerable as maybe some of the other retailers because people have still got to eat, and I mean there's all the time a shift towards convenience. But I think if you get the value equation right and your product is relevant and you offer service and quality, the consumer will find you. So I'm still really optimistic about food service even in this depressed economic climate. I mean, for us to open up in the second 6 months of this year another 139 restaurants, people just say, for how long can you do that, Kevin? But they've been saying that to me for 10 years. So I think it's a good place to trade.
Let's talk a bit about the Africa portion, or the rest of Africa portion of your business. For the 2014 period, 8.6% contribution to franchise system-wide revenue, and that's up to now 9.5% as at the end of August. Is that growth what you are expecting, or is it slower than expected?
Yeah, it's a bit pedestrian. I mean, we're in 16 African countries. I think what we'd like to do is just color in Ghana where we aren't. We think that's a market that's got nice potential for us, and that's work in progress as we speak. A lot more interest in both Debonair's and Mug and Bean across the African landscape. It's difficult to grow your business in Africa. You have some real challenges in terms of finding the right investor. Then the retail space, and of course getting product in and out of Africa is very challenging itself.
What's going to be the growth kicker there? Because everyone is so excited about Africa, and you mentioned that the growth is relatively pedestrian, which stood out for me when I was looking at your results. What will be, do you think it is Ghana that will be a winning territory and transform the Africa landscape for you?
No, I don't think so. I think Ghana is going to be a long-term play. I think if you get it right in Nigeria, that'll give you a kick. But I mean, we're there in Nigeria, as you know. We have a partnership with UAC as a listed company. But Nigeria, we knew that we did quite a stressed asset. But in Nigeria, just everything's gone against you. Not only us, but everybody that's traded there.
We've got a business in Nigeria as well, and we can sympathize with that.
Yeah, so I think, in the last 3 months though, I mean, certainly we seem to be getting some nice momentum in Nigeria. So I think, for all of us who trade in Africa, if you wanted to blow the lights out, you've got to get it right in Nigeria.
You're still opening many more new restaurants. I think you're targeting about 139 for the second quarter.
That's right.
Most of those are in South Africa. Is there a leaning to one brand or another?
Yeah, there are probably two standout brands, and not surprising. I mean, Debonair's Pizza is by far and away the standout brand. I mean, I think that You know, we've been speaking about growth in consumption per capita for pizza as a category for a long time. And that just continues unabated. I mean, you know, Debonair's pizza continues to turn in double-digit like-on-like.
Even with the heated competition in that genre?
You know, the competition thing is an interesting conversation, because we've always said, and I've actually saw it in my SAB Miller days, is that whenever you get competition in a category and there's lots of hype in the category, I mean, providing you've got a category that people can relate to, you're going to get some growth in that category. So, you know, the arrival of Domino's and Pizza Hut and the work that Romans are doing as well, all it done is it's fueled the growth in the category. And so if you're sitting in that category with a brand leader, and providing you do things right, you know, we stand to gain most. So as I said, Debonair's Pizza, double-digit growth, like-on-like, and probably going to open another 50 restaurants this year.
Another strong performer, Mug and Bean.
Absolutely, and you preempted what I was going to say. Mug and Bean, again, in this economic climate, like-on-like sales, double-digit growth, probably going to open another 25 restaurants this year. I mean, also feeding off the fact that there's this growth category amongst coffee consumers in South Africa.
And Starbucks as the global entrant into the African space.
Yeah, about to arrive, and I think that will just fuel the coffee category even further. But I think Mug and Bean just has been perfectly positioned for the South African consumer. It talks about generosity, it's about value, and I mean, consumers just can't get enough of it.
Middle East appears to be a little bit of a dampener to the story, given the political instability in that space.
Yeah, lots of interest in our brands, and we signed an agreement with a master licensee called Excellium about 2 years ago. Really good guys, but haven't been able to get momentum because of all the political instability. Notwithstanding that, though, I think that Dubai certainly has done well for us. I mean, we opened the Steers in Abu Dhabi, doing nicely. Our Debonair's pizzas in Dubai doing very well, and then Tasha's has just blown the lights out. I mean,
specifically in Dubai?
In Dubai, yeah. Mm.
Will that prompt you to open additional Tasha's in that space?
Look, we are robustly right now exploring a second Tasha's in Dubai, but the interest in interest in Tasha's in the Middle East has been phenomenal. I mean, everybody wants one. It's done remarkably well.
Steers is another winner within the group, and the growth, potentially Rugby World Cup into UK. Are you seeing something happening on the ground there? Wimpy as well?
Well, what we have seen certainly with Steers is that the Twickenham Steers is about, you actually have got to walk past it to get to the stadium. So on game days, especially when South Africa plays, it's been pandemonium. Our franchisee sent up some photographs. You can't get into the place. So hopefully that'll continue, that momentum will continue after the World Cup. But Steers is an interesting business too in the South African and African landscape. And what you are seeing in South African landscape now is a revival of burgers as a category. You know, burgers for a long time were quite pedestrian. Burger King, I think, came along and fueled a bit of that interest in burgers. And then you have the more recent entries like Rockamama's, who kind of almost reposition the burger as an eating experience.
For investors out there, the most interesting element of an interim results period or a full year results period is obviously the outlook statement. What stands ahead for the group over the next 6-month period?
We're optimistic about the next 6 months. We're doing some good things. As we mentioned earlier, we're going to open another 139 new restaurants. We've got some really aggressive marketing plans in store for the December season, which is when our business peaks. We're going to be putting into our second half of the year will include a full 6 months of Retail Group Botswana, which has just got 1 month in it for the first 6 months. So on the franchising side, we've got that well boxed. On the logistics side, I'm optimistic that Crown Mines will recover and that those margins will come back. And then in manufacturing, we're doing a whole range of issues in the second 6 months that will manifest themselves in the results. We've got the cater chain business where we're busy dropping that pork basket in right now. We've added cream cheese to our Kucha business in Kucha, and that's doing phenomenally well. We've commissioned a serviette plant at Midrand, and the benefit of that will manifest itself in the second 6 months.
So you're going to reap the benefits from this manufacturing underpin within the broader group,
Absolutely.
Central manufacturing.
Yeah, so you're not seeing a lot of that stuff in the first 6 months because they're all work in progress, but they all should deliver handsomely in the second 6 months.
Let's chat now a little bit about the Kevin Hedderwick story. And you're an inspiration to many as somebody who had a very strong positioning in corporate South Africa, going back to your time at Distel and then into SAB, and then moving into this entrepreneurial role. Firstly, how does your life differ now to when you were in that SAB full-time corporate executive role?
Yeah, look, SAB Miller was probably the finest business school that I could ever wish to go to. I mean, we've more recently brought Norman Adamy onto our board here, and he's obviously spent a bit of time looking at famous brands, and he's kind of commented that, gee, Kevin, I see a lot of SAB around. And I mean, why wouldn't you? Because I think, if you want to look at best practice, that is best practice in my view.
Specifically from a process perspective,
yeah,
you've repeatedly spoken about process in much of the literature that I've read about you.
Two things, process and people. I mean, I think they are masters at execution when it comes to those two parts of the business. So I've taken a lot of learnings out of SAB Miller and instituted them here. The big difference, of course, is that in a place like SAB Miller, it's a big ship. It's difficult to make a difference and to turn that ship. Coming in here, very entrepreneurial business, family owned, still today 32% equity by the family. And so, I've been able to probably express myself a lot easier and better with as in this environment you might have done in SAB Miller. So I think it really is just the size of the business that's made the difference.
How do you go from deciding to take a step back from corporate, heading to East London with your wife, deciding that the pub life may be owning a pub, a keg, relaxing on the beach, and then suddenly you're now this sort of rocketing entrepreneur in the African landscape, in fact in the global landscape given the UK and Middle East exposure. What changed from I want to opt out for a while? What got you kick-started again?
Yeah, well, that's very generous of you, thank you. But I suppose I'd got to a point in my life, maybe midlife crisis, and said, the corporate world's not for me, I'm going to go home. But I mean, I was in that environment probably for 6 months and the mental stimulation just wasn't there. I was very fortunate though that the two boys that had started the keg business, the business had begun to grow and almost explode, and they said, gee Kevin, we're just two restaurateurs, you're a corporate guy, can you come and help us? So we took a real small fledgling business called Keg and we developed it into a very nice business model and sold it onto King Enterprises. And then I've subsequently arrived here. But this for me I think was destined. I always say it probably was written in the stars that I'd meet this family. They're the most remarkable people I could ever wish to meet. They're almost like my own family. And I mean, we've been on a hell of a ride since I arrived here in 2000, and I must say I've enjoyed every minute of it. It's consumed my life. I mean, people ask me what do I do other than work, and the answer is very little.
So there's no change from the corporate days. You're back in the grindstone.
No, probably, when I was at SAB, I think we had about a 92% market share. So people said, but you guys possibly can't work if you have that kind of market share. But let me tell you, that was a tough environment. It was about continuous improvement all the time. And if people think I work hard at SAB, I've probably worked much harder here, but I've loved every minute of it. I've got no regrets.
Back in the sort of formulation of the famous Brands group, one of the first acquisitions was Wimpy.
Yeah.
Market watched with a bated breath because they were, hang on a minute, the market cap of Wimpy is larger than the acquisitor in the space. It's panned out very well for you.
Yeah, it was the Rubicon in the growth of this organization. I mean, I'll never forget, our market cap was about 95 million, and the Wimpy business belonged to management and private equity, and the asking price was 125 million at the time. And I came back in this very same room we are today. I sat the family down and I said, I think this is the game changer. And they said, Kevin, have you lost your marbles? We'll choke on this thing, And I've kind of said, look, you've got to trust me on this thing. I think we can do it. I think that, Wimpy is a phenomenal South African icon, and I think in our hands we can make a difference. So it was akin, I suppose, to growing this business by going up the stairway or getting in a lift. So we decided to take the lift, and I suppose the rest is history. Yeah.
You've expanded the vision as you've grown Famous Brands. Initially it was all about quick service restaurants and being number one in that space. Then you've deviated from that. What is the vision of the group today?
What we've done is we've taken what was, as you say, a classically quick service restaurant or takeaway business, and we've evolved it into a fully integrated food services company today, because manufacturing and logistics form a big part of this business's life. So you sit in a place right now where Famous Brands is a business that has got most of the boxes ticked in terms of retail concepts, highly cash generative, debt-free business, strong balance sheet, And so, we're saying to ourselves is that what are our core competencies? We think they're brands, logistics and manufacturing. And what is the space we know well is food and beverage. We think we know that well. So I think what we have said to the market is that we'd like to expand our repertoire probably outside of typical restaurant business. And we'd look at getting into the more hospitality, leisure type space if the opportunity presented itself. We have looked at a few assets in the last 2 years. Some of them we couldn't get the dots to join. But I think that Famous Brands, in terms of the next chapter in this business as it evolves, could probably take on the shape of a business like AVI, where what Simon Crusty's done is done a multi-branded business in a lot of different categories. I think we would be very hesitant to step out of food and beverage because that's what we know. So, if we wouldn't get into, if someone came along and said, there's a wonderful car dealership business, do you want it? We'd say no. What do you do with the cash? Because this business has the ability to generate cash, which I think astonishes most people. And you can give it back to shareholders in dividends, and I think a lot of shareholders would want that. But I think the more astute investors are saying, how do you take that cash and build something extraordinary? So that's what we want to try and do here.
When you went into the Tasha's deal, it differed from generally what you go after, and you went for 51% with Natasha and Savo Sideris. Retaining the 49%. Is that a model that you will deploy again, or is it just because you see something special in Natasha and Savo?
Look, Natasha and Savo are beyond special. I mean, I think those two kids are extraordinary, and we're just blessed to have them as our partners. The brand is phenomenal. It surprised everybody. They said we'd never franchise it. We've done it. But what we would do, what I love about my time at Famous Brands is looking for young entrepreneurs who have a dream and don't necessarily have the wherewithal to unlock that value. And we've done it with Tasha's in a big way. We've done it in Volvatello. We've done it with a creative coffee business. We've done it in a coffee business. We've done it in a cheese business. So what we look at, we like the model because some of that stuff you really need is a really special set of skills. And I think Natasha and Savo are special sets of skills. Because, I mean, I will say unashamedly, if Famous Brands had taken on Tasha's, we wouldn't have been able to do it ourselves. Because our model, really what we understand well, is what I would call formula-driven businesses, and Tasha's is anything but a formula-driven business. So we look for great assets where there is potential that they have scale, but one of the things that we will do in extraordinary circumstances is to say, we want you to come along as the partner because we can never do this on our own. So we're not greedy to the extent is that we want to own everything that looks nice. Sometimes you really got to be able to share, and I think that model has worked well for us.
Kevin, again, in reading interviews and transcripts with Alec Hogg, having sat down with you in Upper Echelon in 2012, you chatted a bit about the fact that you've got a matric.
Yeah.
And that you didn't go into the tertiary education space.
Yeah.
And I think that is so inspirational to people out there who, come up against barriers when people say you don't have the right qualifications, the right tertiary education. What do you say to detractors to that story, given your success?
Yeah, look, I mean, I would love to have had a tertiary education, but my folks couldn't afford it. So I was very fortunate, though, as I was able to get into some high-class organizations at an entry level. I mean, Distill was the place I started as a merchandiser, making sure the shelves were all packed nice and neatly. And so along the way, I've been blessed to have worked for some great organizations, but much more than that, I think, I've been blessed to have had some mentors in my life. I had a great one in Distillers. I had a fantastic few in SAB Miller. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to want it. And if you come from a humble background, you probably want it more than most. I think Raymond Ackerman speaks the same kind of language. So, I mean, I think I say to young people today is that you can teach most people most things. But what I can't teach you is energy, enthusiasm, passion, and drive. You either have that or you don't. And I think that perhaps that I've been blessed to have quite a lot of that. So, but I'm self-taught, but you're going to have to want to learn. And so if you go into my home, I mean, my study is filled with books about business and filled with books about achievers. And really that's what I've done. I've made an effort myself to say I'll compensate for the fact that I didn't have a tertiary education. But you've got to have some luck along the way, like arriving at Famous Brands was a lucky break for me. And working for great organizations and with some wonderful mentors. I mean, so I've been blessed.
What would you say to your 21-year-old self today, if you had the opportunity to sit him down?
No, I suppose hindsight is always a wonderful science, but I mean, I think I would do it all over again. You know, I wouldn't. I'm not sorry now that I didn't go to varsity, although at the time I was. But I mean, I think that I would do it all over again. I just have an absolute passion to succeed. I think what's driven me in all my life, all my corporate life, and perhaps sometimes has been my biggest weakness, is the fact that I fear failure. And so if you do that, I mean, you're going to make sure that you get out of bed every morning with a spring in your step, and I've been blessed.
When you took the decision to step out of corporate, was that a difficult decision to make? Because I think a lot of people grapple with that. They're caught into that regularity of income, the safety net, and it's very scary to walk the path of an entrepreneur. I mean, you didn't think you were going to go into an entrepreneurial role at that stage. You were going to take a step back.
Yeah, it was scary, you know, but I mean, I'd actually, if the story be told, I think is that I think there was maybe a view at SAB Miller and the late Graham Mackay, you know, who I was very close to, and I've become close to Norman Adamy over the years. Is there was a time in SAB Miller, is that where SAB were on this blind drive, is that anybody who was going to reach the top in SAB had to have an MBA. And I mean, I knew, sitting with my Boere Matric, the chances of me doing that were kind of remote. So I thought, well, what's the next best thing for me to do? Is let me go and see if I can do something on my own. But I'll take a franchise because I know the industry, and that's what I did. But it was petrifying to do it, but you know, it was one of life's lessons for me.
You've mentioned that process and people are incredibly important on the road to success.
Yeah.
Talk to me about people. How do you manage people, and how do you inspire people?
Yeah, I get accused here of being a bit of a micromanager because I am very much hands-on. I'm operational by nature, but I mean, I'll never forget having met the CEO of Coca-Cola in Atlanta. And I mean, the jobs don't come bigger than that. And you know, I said to him, "How on earth do you manage this global business?" And I mean, he was spontaneously, his response was, "Kevin, it's all about line of sight." So you know, I make sure that I have line of sight in the business. So I am very operationally driven. And I think I try to lead from the front. I wouldn't want anybody to do anything that I would do myself. From a recruitment perspective, I mean, I look for all the things in those recruitment sessions that I think epitomize the type of business you want. Is that, you know, we've had some mishaps here where we've employed some really, really clever people whose IQ are off the charts and whose psychometrics are just in another league, but it hasn't worked because they haven't been able to fit the culture. So,
and are you quick to change course? Once you realize you've made a mistake, that person doesn't fit in, do you take the necessary action? Yeah,
unfortunately I am quite tough about that. I mean, because I don't think there's any point in delaying the agony. You know, if you're in a working environment, and particularly in a team environment, if the individual is not going to fit the culture, there's no point in delaying that conversation, because the culture in Famous Brands is not going to change. People have come in here and said, well, you know, don't you want to shape the culture so that you can fit people that you bring from outside? We're not going to do that. This business has got a unique culture, and you'll either fit it or you won't. And the system will either find you out, or you know, you'll either put up your hand and say, I don't fit you, or the business will say you don't fit you.
When you joined up with the Halamandaris family and Steers Holdings, obviously that converted to the Famous Brands naming convention. At that stage, you had to go into a family-owned company. They had surrounded themselves with people that they'd been working with for a long time. Did you have to go in and make some hard decisions?
With the family were here and very much installed in an executive capacity. I mean, I started here as the MD of the Steers brand, and then eventually evolved. And I mean, as we started to put the people and process into the place, I mean, there were some people that they'd surrounded themselves with for a long time that were not going to be able to deliver at the level that we wanted. So I mean, I think I did the right thing in the beginning, was to go back to them and say, look, you know, this individual is a relation of yours, but we're just really not going to be able to move the business forward if we don't, you know, move these people along. So please, would you have a conversation with this individual, because it's your relative, not mine. And I mean, they were very, very adamant, is that those conversations are yours, Kevin, but we'll back you every step of the way. And I mean, that's remarkable, but that's just give you an idea of the kind of family they are. So they left it to me, Even though it was some tough conversations, and I think outside of the working environment they probably faced some criticism for allowing us to do the things we did, but thank heavens we delivered results, and they've been awfully supportive.
What do you want for Famous Brands over the next 10 years?
Yeah, I think what we all want to do is certainly from the family perspective and myself, is to leave a legacy behind. Is that we've taken a really small family business and we've grown it, and I think Famous Brands is really at a point in time now where it's about to embark on the second chapter of its history, which is what I said, moving from just being a pure food services environment to a business that's akin to a place like AVI. I think that this business has the ability for significant value to still be unlocked.
And I'm going to take this opportunity because, again, those people who are watching this show who look to you for that inspiration, I'm going to ask for some salient advice to fellow entrepreneurs who are walking that very hard path right now of believing in themselves, sometimes against all odds. What is your advice in that regard?
I think you've just got to persevere. I think if you've got sheer grit and determination. We had an HR director who used to work for us, a girl called Ingrid Dubuisson, who I admired a lot. She's gone off to do her own thing in business, and she said is that there's two things about you, Kevin, I think that people can take away, and there's tenacity and courage. And I think if you've got dollops of those and you're onto a good idea, just hang in there. It'll work, it'll come.
Well, I'm inspired. I've been chatting to Kevin Hedderwick, the CEO of Famous Brands. You're watching Captains of Industry here on CNBC Africa.